All right, so this is the second half to my Wikipedia one. My recording software only goes to 30 minutes, so I can't make 55-minute videos. um, so I want to talk about these criticism and controversies. Um, we'll start with the number one: child sex abuse. The church has been criticized for a number of abuses allegedly perpetrated or covered up by local church leadership. Local means that it's not the whole church. That means that individual areas are doing this. Several cases have been settled out of court. That doesn't mean the church was responsible. Um, like just because the church settles with somebody does not mean the church admits that they did something bad or that they were caught. It just means that they settled. And a lot of times it's probably because they feel like the victim deserves restitution. Um, and so they give them some money. In other case, churches have. Well, actually, before we move on, I do want to talk about that a little bit more. Um, when they settle out of court, I'm pretty sure, like almost 100% of the time, the church probably doesn't have to be held liable at all. And the reason I say that is because the church handbook provide pretty much condone does it does not condone any sort of abusive behavior of any kind. It is completely against it. We've had multiple prophets come out and speak out against it. They have all said that it's a very serious sin. um, so like the church as a whole, I don't feel like is liable for any like, because anyone acting in this way is doing so outside of church teachings. Um, and for those of you conspiracy theorists, no, there's not a secret room in the temple where we go and we learn about all of this stuff. Like it's the most ridiculous controversy I've ever heard. Because these people actually think that the church secretly teaches like sex abuse, but doesn't teach it to 90% of the membership. And the reason that's an issue is because they teach 90% of the membership to abhor um, abuse and sexual abuse, especially sexual abuse. And you think that they're just inviting certain people in and being like, hey, you know how we said that sexual abuse is really bad? Well, actually, yeah, that's not happening. That doesn't make sense. Um, and yeah, some people have even accused Thomas S. Monson of this. And it's like, that man is like the most awesome guy ever. Why would you think he did that? Anyway, so yeah, the church settles with some people. Um, and like there could be cases made where saying, well, you allowed this bishop to be put in a position, and I think those are probably the only cases. Like if a bishop turns out to have previous cases of sexual abuse that the church somehow didn't know about, um, then yeah, I'm sure they could get them for something on that. Those cases are rare and few and far between. There's nothing like that. um, so yes, they have settled. I think it's mostly because they know the victim's not going to get money from the abuser, and they want to help out. I guarantee that's a lot of these settling cases. Um, another thing is the church actually has a membership system where you have a record number. I have a record number. My wife has a record number. I think all of our kids have record numbers. They keep track of how many people are in your family. They give them record numbers. They give you a record and they keep track of it. If you are, at least in the church's awareness, flagged for any sort of sexual misconduct, abuse, something like that, they put it on your record and it shows to stake presidents and stuff. So the the idea of a known sexual abuser being called into a bishopric or a position where they're around people they abused is highly unlikely, if not impossible. We actually have a very safe system for dealing with abuse and stuff. Anyway, in other cases, church leaders have been criticized for allegedly failing to report abuse. Yes, this is a separate issue. There was the church abuse hotline, which may or may not have advised people to keep things quiet. However, all cases I'm aware of, that's not what was going on. So I don't, like you'd have to find in order to convince me that this is an issue, you'd have to find a specific case where the church for sure told someone not to report. The handbooks guidelines that you should report. um, anyway, I'm talking about the Euler thing, by the way. With that's the only time I'm aware of where someone came out and said the church told them not to report, and then the church came out and released phone records and said, "Actually, we did." So, and that's unusual. The church doesn't usually do that. Um, Clergy penitent privilege? Yeah, no. That may have happened in a few cases, but the church handbook is against this. You are not. We're not one of those churches that's like, hey, if I confess to my bishop that I murdered someone, that's just between you and God, right? No, the bishop is supposed to report that. We're not Catholics. Um, Failing to keep records of sexual abuse games, that's possible, but unlikely, which were reported through its helpline phone number. That's also possible. If the helpline phone number is not tied to the church records department, then that is possible. However, this is a big misnomer. I like no there, every institution on the planet has some sort of sexual abuse going on. We polls done by Pew Research and others have shown that we are actually a lot safer than the other religions as far as sexual abuse. If you want to see something about that, you should watch the debate Jacob Hansen had on abuse fairly recently. Just look on his channel, Thoughtful Faith. You'll find stuff about that. Scriptures. In the late 1820s, criticism centered on the claim that Joseph Smith had to have been led to a gold plate. Yes, there is criticism on that. Mainstream archaeological, historical, and scientific communities have discovered little to support the existence of civilizations described in the Book of Mormon and do not consider it to be an actual record of historical events. This is not accurate at all. Mainstream historical, archaeological, and scientific communities are not looking at the world through an LDS lens. They're not like mainstream archaeologists, historians, and scientific people are not going, what do the Mormons think about this? Do the Mormons agree with it? Like, they're not doing that. The people who are looking into this, into the evidence of the Book of Mormon and stuff, you'll find them at Fair Research. You can look that up on Google, just Fair Research, LDS. And we actually have tons of evidence to support the Book of Mormon's accuracy. And we do have literal documentation of old world events that we are a lot more sure of than anything in the New World. However, there is a lot of New World evidence. There are a few different theories for where it took place. We do have evidence for all of them. However, I myself, as a Mesoamericanist, I'll be biased and I'll say it definitely was in Mesoamerica. I have no doubt. Scholars have pointed out a number of anachronisms with the text. What this is not telling you is that there was like 200 anachronisms when it first came out in 1830, and today there's 31, which means that Joseph Smith guessed correctly on over 150 things in the Book of Mormon that were not discovered by archaeology at the time that have since been verified to be accurate. So considering that that's well over, I think that's close to 80% accuracy on things that were thought to not be accurate, I almost feel like Joseph Smith is more trustworthy than the archaeologists. But I will concede, we have no official evidence. The other thing I should point out, though, is like, no, we haven't discovered a city named Zarahemla, but that's because we don't know the names of the cities. Like, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but like Teotihuacan or Teotihuacan, whatever, we do not know that that's the name of the city. That's what we call it. And maybe that's what modern locals call it, but we do not know what the ancient people of that city called it. They could have called it Zarahemla, perhaps. We don't know. Chichen Itza, El Mirador, all of those places that could be Nephite cities, we do not know the names of them. So people saying we haven't discovered the existence, We might have. It's very there's a very real chance right now that we absolutely have discovered cities from people in the Book of Mormon, and we just don't know that that's what they are. I'm not using that to try and like confirmation bias or say, oh, that's my one ray of hope. Like, I believe this either way. But I'm saying that the chances of that being a possibility are way higher than believing Joseph Smith just made this up. Like, it's more of a believable to believe that than it is to believe that Joseph Smith made up the Book of Mormon. Um, they argue that no evidence of a reformed Egyptian language has ever been discovered. The Book of Mormon writers say that they wrote in an unusual way. So we would not expect there to be evidence of that, at least not frequent enough that it shows up in the archaeological record without significant studying and digging. So yeah, that's not an issue. That was, yeah, contradicting its claim that it was written in Reformed Egyptian. Contradicting what? It's a dead language. We're claiming that a dead language existed. Prove to me that, like, you can't prove a dead language existed when there's no evidence of it. This is basically what this is an evidence from silence argument, where it's like we have no proof of this, therefore it's not true. And there's just so many things that you believe in everyday life that you have no proof for, but are true. Meaning that an argument from evidence is just, you just shouldn't take a position, is the actual correct answer there. General archaeological and genetic evidence has not supported the Book of Mormon statements about any known indigenous people of the Americas. Again, this first bit could be completely not true. We might have discovered archaeological evidence. We just don't know that that's what it is. And genetic evidence is a misnomer because we're talking about the Book of Mormon is about 3 groups of people that made it over to the Americas and lived among the people of the Americas. And it details that there were significant bottlenecks that occurred in that time, both natural and cultural, due to like wars and stuff. The natural ones, we actually do have evidence that there were volcanoes going off in Mesoamerica around the time that the Book of Mormon details a huge natural emergency. So yeah, DNA researchers who have actually studied the ability for DNA evidence to be preserved like that have pointed out that there's going to be no DNA evidence. So we wouldn't expect to find genetic evidence. So this is not something that's actually a point. This is just a wild goose chase. And again, like, if you think I'm wrong, go research this stuff. We have papers on this. I'm just giving you an overview of what the average Mormon knows. I'm not trying to back this with scientific evidence. Again, if you want to look for this stuff, go to FAIR. FAIR, just type in FAIR LDS to your Google search thing. You'll find thousands of articles about all of this stuff. This is a really good one. Since its publication in 1842, the Book of Abraham, currently published as part of the canonical Pearl of Great Price, it will always be that way, don't worry, has also been a major source of controversy. Numerous non-Mormon Egyptologists, beginning in the late 19th century, have disagreed with Joseph Smith's explanations of the book's facsimiles. This is true. Translations of the original papyri by both Mormon and non-Mormon Egyptologists do not match the text of the Book of Abraham as purportedly translated by Joseph Smith. Issues with this sentence here specifically. Yes, the papyri that we have, which is, I believe, 10% of the original collection that survived a fire, conveniently, did not match what Joseph Smith translated. That is true. As I just stated, though, there was a fire and 90% of the collection was lost. And we know from journal entries, you can find this I can't think of his name. But All Those in Favor did a video on it. Just look up All Those in Favor Egyptology. It'll come up. Dr. Carey something. He's an Egyptologist. He studied this. And basically, in LDS history, we have journal entries that make claims about the papyrus that Joseph Smith was studying from, and it indicates that it was much larger than the papyri that we have now. Um, so basically, um, if he was translating from a different papyri, uh, it's completely it is almost 90% possible that the papyri they claim is refuting Joseph Smith's prophecy or his prophetic ability is actually not the papyrus that Joseph Smith was even translating from in the first place. Secondly, Joseph Smith did not speak Egyptian nor know how to write Egyptian or translate it in any way. So even if we find the correct papyri and it did translate to what Joseph Smith was talking about, the other theory is the transmission theory, which is that Joseph Smith didn't actually need the document because he was receiving it from God. I believe that both of these theories are correct. I believe we do not have the original papyri because journal entries state we don't have the correct papyri, and I believe that even if we did, Joseph Smith still was using a translation method that was not literal modern sense of the word translation. He was more transmission from God. So yes, this is not an issue like people think it is. Um, However, another thing this is not mentioning is that there are a ton of things in the book of Abraham that, again, were anachronistic when Joseph Smith wrote it that have been verified by modern archaeologists, both non-member and member. So even contemporary average run-of-the-mill archaeology has vindicated Joseph Smith's claims in the Book of Abraham. And the facsimiles, yeah. Some interpretations of the facsimiles have been found to be inaccurate. However, the facsimiles we have look slightly different than the ones they're trying to say they are. And it has been proven, not without a shadow of doubt, but it has been proven somewhat that people got different interpretations from pictures sometimes. All right. So in my mind, these two are completely demolished. Like there's nothing in here that actually has anything solid against us. Um, yeah, scholars have also asserted. Yeah, there is truth to this, and but like again, there's tons of nuance here, and I honestly believe that if you do enough research into this, you'll come away with the idea that Joseph Smith knew what he was doing. Um, I've seen a lot of anti-Mormons be like, this is embarrassing for us. I actually like the Book of Abraham and all this stuff about it because we are discovering more about it, and it is vindicating Joseph Smith. If you are a con man and you run a con, it is highly unlikely that as time continues your con gets vindicated, um, which is exactly what's been going on with recent study. Carrie Muhlestein, there we go. Dr. Muhlestein has released a paper on this, this whole section that you can go and read. It's called like Exploring the Book of Abraham or something. It's on FAIR. Like go to FAIR, look it up. But or look up Dr. Carrie Muhlestein. Polygamy. Polygamy, called plural marriage within the church, was practiced by church leaders for more than half the 19th century. This is true. Practiced publicly from 1852 to 1890. That's true. But it was practiced earlier than that secretly. And here's an interesting thing. By between 20 and 30% of Latter-day Saint families. I'm pretty sure this just said 20% the other day, so that's just evidence right there that Wikipedia is constantly changing. Although I have no proof of that. I just thought it said 20%. I thought it was closer to 50%, so this is actually still better than the number I thought it was. It was instituted privately in the 1830s by Joseph Smith. This is true. And announced publicly in 1852. This is true. For over 60 years, the church and the United States were at odds over the issue. This is true. At one point, the Republican platform referenced the twin relics of barbarism, polygamy, and slavery. Notice that barbarism and slavery are separate from polygamy. They're not saying that we're guilty of all three. They're just, that's one of the issues that they had with us. The church defended the practice as a matter of religious freedom. Yes, we did. While the federal government aggressively sought to eradicate it in 1862, the United States Congress passed the Moral Anti-Bigamy Act, which polygamy, oh gosh, prohibited plural marriage in the territories. I'm not having issues with any of this so far. In 1890, church president Wilford Woodruff issued a manifesto that he got revelation for, by the way. It was because of the pressure of the United States government, but he did seek revelation, and the Lord did tell him to release this. Though it did not dissolve existing polygamous marriages, some church members continued to enter into polygamous marriages. This is true. But these eventually stopped in 1904 when President Joseph F. Smith basically said, "We're for sure done with this." Um, yes, several small fundamentalist groups seeking to continue the practice split from the LDS Church. Yes, that's called the FLDS, which now, and our church, not them, our church now excommunicates members found practicing polygamy and distances itself from those formal groups. Yep, that's true. The church does not allow divorced or widowed men to be sealed to other women without canceling any existing sealings. I believe this is not true. Yeah, no, this is not true. We continue to allow. Oh, no, yeah, no, sorry, I read that wrong. The church does allow divorced or widowed men to be sealed. Yeah, this is true. Sorry, that is true. So I think what they're saying here is that polygamy is bad, and it is. However, the Book of Mormon teaches that sometimes when God wants to bring up seed, he will allow the practice. And we know that even in the Bible, God allowed the practice. Joseph, Abraham, Moses, Solomon, King David, all of those people had multiple wives and were great men till the day they died for the Lord. So if it's so horrible, why did the Lord permit it so permissively? So yeah, I think that's what they're going for here, and it's just founded on nothing. There's no indication in the Bible that polygamy is specifically bad, but the Book of Mormon does say that monogamy is the norm. So I'm in a monogamous marriage. I have no desire to marry another woman. I'm very happy with my wife. So if this ever came back into the church, which I don't think it will, I would be in the 80 to 70% that did not participate. Here's a little section about minorities. A lot of this is this video is taking longer than I wanted it to as well. I think I've talked. If I haven't talked about this, I'll talk about it real quick here. The church may have made a mistake, and again, I have said that the church can make mistakes. We don't believe we're perfect. And that was the ideas of 1830s Protestantism era, was that blacks were somehow cursed, and that kind of seeped into early LDS theology. And yeah, we did have a priesthood ban. Joseph Smith actually allowed several it says that right here. Joseph Smith allowed several black men to be ordained as priests during his presidency. I think they went much further than that, actually. But also taught that the dark skin of I don't think Joseph Smith taught that. I think Brigham Young did. We'll see. All Abraham's children. Yeah, I don't know if they're accurate on that. I don't think this is necessarily accurate either. I know that Brigham Young did talk about it. But the idea that we officially taught that as church doctrine is false. It's never been church doctrine that black people are cursed. Yes, this is true. We barred black people. That's unfortunate. It happened. We've gone back. We've fixed it. I don't know a whole bunch about about Native Americans. You would have to consult. There's a couple Native American channels that kind of do talk about this. For this section, I only have 5 minutes left. That's why I'm hurrying. I've got 5 minutes and 3 seconds. I'm going to say right here, the church teaches the family proclamation, which is very against um, trans people. It's very against the whole gender war. Um, it's very against gay and lesbian marriages. However, we do not hate these people. We do not hate them. We still allow them to come to our church. Trans people are allowed to do pretty much anything except for until they transition. If you have gender dysphoria and you want to come to church, we're fine with that. The handbook just states that you have to do everything from your assigned at birth gender. Um, and don't clip me saying that assigned at birth thing. I'm not a supporter of the LGBTQ movement. I'm fine with them as people, but I do not support their ideologies. Um, but anyway, what was I gonna? Oh, but if they have transitioned, then yeah, there is some pretty serious restrictions in place. And then as far as gay and lesbian people, I believe as long as you are in a normal marriage, we don't care. But if you engage in gay or lesbian behavior, which I understand is difficult and that's part of who you are, and it's not your fault, I understand that. That's just what the church teaches. I think there is issues with people who practice those being gay or lesbian. Criticism of Joseph Smith, the bank failure. We talked about that in the last video. The Mormon War, extermination order. Those aren't issues with Joseph Smith. Those are issues with the government. Um, Theocratic. I talked about this in the last one. I don't think we had a theocracy. I don't know what a yeah, maybe it was a theodemocracy. It might have been that. Yeah, it was. I would say it was a theodemocracy, but I don't think it was like theocracy. I think those are different things. Yeah, I think we've already talked about plural marriage. Then after the, I think some people have tried to say he's a con man. I've made shorts about this. He's not a con man. Um, Book of Mormon musical is terrible. If you're looking at that as a source, don't. It's not. I don't know who this guy is. Lambasted Smith is a mountebank, charlatan, and fraud. Yeah, these are not substantiated. These are not substantiated claims. You have to substantiate stuff if you're going to say that it's true. Financial controversy. I'm not sure about any of this. I will say the church has a ton of money right now, and a lot of people don't like it. My comments on that is, if you don't like it, then donate 1.4 billion per year to humanitarian aid, and then tell us how we can spend our money. We have a ton of buildings. We have a ton of temples. We believe temples are extremely important, and we need them for the spiritual survival of the human race. And that costs a lot of money. So we kind of need the money that we do have. This is kind of similar to the whole Elon Musk is a trillionaire kind of thing. Like, yes, but he doesn't have $1 trillion in his bank account. I would also like to point out with these last minute I have, the church has done, not the church, I think Pew Research and others have done studies on people who attend the temples and who attend our church, and they are actually significantly better off financially. Usually, they're more financially stable. They have less depression, less anxiety. So if you want us to solve world hunger and stuff like this, then join our church. Help us spread our message, because our message is what fixes it. Throwing money at the problem, as I believe the great Alyssa Grenfeld said recently, throwing money at a problem doesn't necessarily fix it. But we're doing more than just throwing money at it. We're donating 1.4 billion. I think that's not even including the volunteer hours spent, which is probably in excess of 1.4 billion. But yeah, Financial controversy, yeah, there is. It's not really that awesome though once you study in it. Anyway, I hope this helps. Uh, None of these issues are issues that I think are serious. But yeah, I hope this helps. We'll see you in the next one.